Mallorca is an island known for some absolutely iconic cycling climb, with this being possibly my favourite of all. The scene of Remco Evenepoel's stunning solo victory in the Trofeo Sierra de Tramontana, and one that has become a real testing climb for lots of competitive cyclists staying out on the island. What makes it so great and what qualifies it for being one of my favourite climbs of all time is the gradient is so nice and shallow that you feel like you are absolutely flying up there, even at like moderate zone 2 watts. Finishing at the iconic Repsol petrol station at the top with a great cafe, usually swarmed by many cyclists stopping for a mid-ride coffee. Its tree-lined roads, especially at the base, offer a real nice bit of shade, especially in hot summer months. However, that won't be too much of a problem right now here in February. A couple of years ago, when I was out on holiday here, I did an effort that took me around 21 minutes and 26 seconds, which at the time was a huge PB, both for power and really for just an all-out climbing effort. But I think I've got a lot fitter in the past few years, and I really want to re-tackle that climb and see just how much faster I've got. Of course, being such a shallow climb, a lot of the best times have been set by pro pelotons during some of the Mallorca Challenge races, and there isn't really much of a chance of a solo rider getting anywhere near. But I think if I can get anywhere close to the 20-minute barrier, I think that'd be a real valiant effort for myself and will serve as a really good proxy to a 20-minute FTP test, which is probably something I am fairly overdue now, even though I'm carrying a lot of fatigue in my legs at the minute. But now we get onto the question of what bike will I be riding today? Well, unfortunately, I haven't managed to bring out one of my bikes, such as my Time or my BMC hill climb machine, so I've had to rent a bike out here, and I've rented a Gen 8 Trek Madone with 105 Di2 and some pretty shallow low-end carbon wheels. But unfortunately, as you're about to see, it is definitely no light bike. Flipping heck, 9 kilos on the dot. I'm glad I've lost some weight recently, otherwise I'd be crawling up the climbs. So yeah, despite Trek in theory slimming down on the latest Madone, they definitely haven't cut much weight out of it. That is proper in the heavy aero bike territory, and it looks like a flipping climbing bike. Right, that's heavy bike excuses out the way. Let's throw on some kit and get out to the climb. Here we go. Kicking off the effort early on, I was super cautious not to go out too hard, keeping that effort around the sort of 330 to 340 watt mark, slowly easing into it and trying to keep fairly low and aero, as this is a really high speed climb, which you can see from the fact I'm currently doing 23 kilometers an hour. I knew I probably had somewhere in the 340 to 350 watt range in my legs today, so I didn't want to go out too conservative, but yeah, I couldn't blow my legs straight away. Especially when it feels so fast and smooth, it's super easy to go out too hard on a climb like this. But with 20 minutes left ahead of you, even the slightest of surges can come back to bite you. Hitting the first hairpin, you'll notice bike handling is really quite important on this climb, as the speed you're carrying into such tight corners is really high. So you need to be super careful you don't overcook it and end up flying off the road or into oncoming traffic. Fortunately, the road was quite quiet today, so I managed to pass other cyclists with ease, but it can be super busy at times up here. And of course, when you're trying to do an all-out maximum effort, you want to try and stay as smooth as you can through each corner and hold as much momentum as possible. But then I was slightly concerned disaster had struck. I noticed a big queue of cars up the road and realised there was a set of temporary lights, or well, at least there was a workman with a stop-start sign holding traffic while they were doing tree clearance work. I think I handled it really maturely, slowly coming to a stop, not panicking, just letting it not bother me and try and minimise its impact as much as possible. Coming out of the roadworks then, I had to be really careful not to massively surge.
That was annoying.
As that would really burn a match there. I did actually let my power go slightly up into the 400s while I was accelerating, but as soon as I got back up to speed, I dropped the power down below that sort of VO2 max zone into a steady zone 4 effort and get cracking, tapping out the sort of 340 watt range. Now I'm back up at that standard sort of 23, 24 kilometer an hour speed. quick shameless plug, I've ridden about 600 kilometers in the past 4 days in these Sirocco SRX bibs, and they genuinely are, I think, the most comfortable bibs I've ever worn. I've always struggled with kit fitting my tall, skinny, slightly awkward build, but these feel absolutely dialed in when it comes to the fit. I'll leave my affiliate link in the description below if you want to check some out for yourself. This is a climb really of several parts. The first part is this bit in the woods you can see at the bottom with lots of back-to-back hairpins. But then as we enter the middle section of the climb, there is a long stretch with flatter and even at times downhill gradients as you kind of traverse to the next set of hairpins up to the top. At this point, I knew my goal was to try and maintain as much speed as possible whilst using the least watts possible, trying to let my legs recover as much as I can, because I know on them final hairpins there's loads of time I could lose if I go too deep here. When you're on flatter sections like this, the actual impact of pushing more watts is far lower than when you're on the steeper gradients. That's a lesson I've learned over years of hill climb racing. These fast sections though are where I really wish I was on my own setup, as this trek I've got has a massive stack at the front, so I was really struggling to tuck down and get aero, and I think that has definitely cost me a fair bit of time. But another factor came into play here as well, and that was the prevailing wind. On this long straight, unfortunately, I was battling straight into a pretty stiff headwind. It reminded me actually of doing the struggle hill climb, when on that one as well, where I'd budgeted for a bit of recovery, I was straight into a headwind, getting nowhere near as much recovery as I would have on a nice still or tailwind day. Ready to hit the big decision maker of the climb, and that is the final run of hairpins. Now this run of, I think it's about 5 or 6 hairpins, gets quite steep in places, but they are crucially not as tight as some of the earlier corners at the bottom section of the climb. But I knew this was the final moment where I was going to be able to make a real difference with this effort. So as you can see, my power is up in the sort of 360, 370 region at times, especially as I'm accelerating into the straights, trying to keep going as much as possible. But as you can see, my position's wavering a bit. I'm often spending time on the tops here, which shows that I'm definitely tiring as I'm struggling to hold that really good aero position that I've been holding pretty well for the majority of the climb to this point. And then disappointment hit again. As I reached the top of the hairpins, I realised the final straight run into the bridge by the top at the petrol station was going to be pretty much a block headwind. So I knew it was going to be a right sufferfest to the line. The gradient really does back off here, so if you've got a good tailwind day or a still day, you're going to be absolutely cruising. But unfortunately, I'm still battling into a right stiff headwind here. So yeah, it's going to be a struggle, but I have to dig deep and keep the power on and see how fast I can get to the top. I knew 20 minutes was looking possible here, but it was going to be very tight. So I had to keep the foot on the gas and not back off too much. Yeah, I'm starting to hurt now, and holding that aero position when you're really tired is difficult. I don't know if you've ever tried to do it in a TT or something. Yeah, you start really aching here. And on the horizon, you can see the bridge looming where we do a 180 and finish up at the petrol station. Now this bridge is really narrow and you can sometimes get stuck by traffic. And looking out to my right, you can see there is a bright red and yellow Tib bus, which I only just managed to squeeze past. Fortunately, there was enough room on the road. Otherwise, that would have really tanked my effort there. And I had just enough in the legs to squeeze it up over 400 watts for the final run into that iconic petrol station and cafe at the top, and hit the lap button. Let's see what the time is. Oh, we made it to the top. I managed to creep in just under 20 minutes, which I'm super happy with. Yeah, given how horrible that headwind was up there, that was pretty brutal. It was a proper irregular effort. I even got stuck at some roadworks halfway up, which was a bit of a pain. Fortunately, I timed it almost perfect. I didn't have to stop for very long. But yeah, oh, what a day it is though. Look at this weather. It is beautiful today. I better get riding now because I've got quite a long ride back to the hotel. But also, it's weird to see this cafe so quiet. There's normally like 300 bikes out the front of it. But I guess given it is February, it's not quite peak cycling season yet, even though it's weird. On the other side of the island where I'm staying, there's not many Brits about, but around here, just so many Brits, it's quite funny. Right, let's get on with the ride home, and I'll catch you with all the stats when we're back. Not today, Suckalobra. Not today. So I'm back at the hotel now on this stunning terrace with this amazing view of the sea behind me, and it's time to talk how the climb went. I did it in a time of 19 minutes and 55 seconds. So yes, I did manage to squeeze just below that 20-minute barrier. And my average power was 340 watts with 343 watts normalized for pretty much what was a 20-minute effort. And at my weight of 65 kilos, that puts me around 5.2 watts per kilo, which for 20 minutes, I'm pretty happy with, even if I think I could do slightly more fresh, because my average heart rate was around 181 with a max of 190. Now I know my absolute max is nearer that 200 BPM mark. So yes, I was a bit fatigued, but I think I still had a slight extra gear to go. Like, I was tired at the top, but not completely cooked. I know 340 watts isn't particularly groundbreaking or even higher than my 20-minute power this time last year, but there's one key difference. When I set my 20-minute PB of 346 watts last year, firstly, I was on the turbo, which is a very different kind of effort to an irregular gradient out in the real world, where I'm slowing down for corners and descents and passing traffic and all sorts of other stuff like roadworks partway up. But the main thing I have to say is the big difference in the fact that after that effort, that was me done. I had to lie on the sofa for 10 minutes. But today, after my sort of 10, 15 minutes stopped in the cafe, having a coffee and a Coke, I felt pretty normal straight away. My zone 2 power was pretty much bang on where it always is, with my heart rate behaving absolutely normal. I was able to carry out the rest of my zone 2 ride, which was another 3.5 hours, with my power pretty much perfectly in range, and yeah, my heart rate wasn't elevated really at all. It's speaking volumes about the improvement to my durability, which is super excited ahead of this year's gravel season, especially for Dirty Reaver. Now, of course, as you saw in the footage, it didn't all go smooth sailing. There were a couple of things that maybe made the effort not perfect. Firstly, of course, I got stuck at that set of roadworks where they were chopping all the trees, but I don't think it had too much of an impact on my time, and I think I dealt with it pretty well. Didn't let it bother me, slowed down, stopped, waited for a couple of seconds, then got back going again without massively spiking my power or panic pacing. Also, I know excuses, but that heavy trek combined with a headwind made it feel like I was riding through treacle at times, especially towards the top, where it was a complete block headwind. On a 20-minute climb, only being around 4 minutes slower than Remco Evenepoel, pretty much one of the most aero riders out there. Considering how fast the average speed up this climb was due to its shallow gradient, I'm really happy with, and I'm so excited where my performance is going. If you want to get the full uncut effort clip, you can join channel membership right now by scanning the QR code on screen. But remember, the best way to support the channel is by subscribing and simply watching and enjoying my content. And on that note, there's plenty more Mallorca content still to come, and I'll see you all in the next one.